I am recording the video and today's topic is timer. The ASP.NET Ajax timer control performs postback at defined intervals. If you use the timer control with an update panel control, you can enable partial page updates at a defined interval. You can also use the timer control to post the whole page. This topic contains the following sections: scenarios, background, code example, class reference. Timer control scenarios. You use the timer control when you want to do the following: periodically update the contents of one or more update panel controls without refreshing the whole web page. Run code on the server every time that a timer control calls a postback. Synchronously post the whole web page to the web server at a defined interval. Background. The timer control is a server control that embeds a JavaScript component into the web page. The JavaScript component initiates the postback from the browser when the interval that is defined in the interval property has elapsed. You set the properties for the timer control in code to run code that runs on the server, and those properties are passed to the JavaScript component. An instance of the script manager class must be included in the web page when you use the timer control. When a postback was initiated by the the timer control traces the tick event on the server. You can create an handler for the tick event to perform action when the page is posted to the server. Set the interval property to specify how often postbacks will occur, and set the enable property to turn the timer on or off. The interval property is defined in a millisecond and has the default value of 60,000 milliseconds or 60 seconds. Note: setting the interval property of a timer control to a small value can generate significant traffic to the web server. Use the timer control to refresh the content only as often as necessary. You can include more than one timer control on a web page if different update panel control must be updated at different intervals. Alternatively, a single instance of the timer control can be triggered for more than one update panel control in a web page. Using a timer control inside a update panel control. When the timer control is included inside the update panel control, the timer control automatically works as a trigger of the update panel control. You can override the behavior by setting the children as a trigger property of the update panel control to false. For timer controls inside an update control, the JavaScript timing component is recreated only when each postback finishes. Therefore, the timed interval does not start until the page returns from the postback. For instance, if the interval property is set to 60,000 milliseconds, but the postback takes 3 seconds to complete, the next postback will occur 63 seconds after the previous postback. Using a timer control outside an update panel control. When the timer control is outside an update panel control, you must explicitly define the timer control as a trigger for the update panel control to be updated. If the timer control is outside an update panel control, The JavaScript timing component continues to run as the postback is being processed. For example, if the interval property is set to 60,000 milliseconds and the postback takes 3 seconds to complete, the next postback will occur 60 seconds after the previous postback. The user will see the refreshed content in the update panel control for only 57 seconds. You must set the interval property to a value that enables one asynchronous postback to complete before the next postback is initiated. If a new postback is initiated while an earlier postback is being processed, the first postback is cancelled. The timer control is a looping control used to repeat any task in a given time interval. It is an important control used in client side and server side programming, also in Windows services. Furthermore, if we want to execute an application after a specific amount of time, we can use the timer control. Once the timer is enabled, it generates a tick event handler to perform any defined task in its time interval property. It starts when the start method of timer control is called, and it repeats the defined task continuously until the timer stops. Timer control properties. There are following properties of the timer control. Name. The name property is used to set the name of the control. Enabled. The enable property is used to enable or disable the timer control. By default, it is true. Interval. An interval property is used to set or obtain the iteration interval in a millisecond to raise the timer control's elapsed event. According to the interval, a timer repeats the task. Auto reset. The auto reset property is used to obtain or set a boolean value that determines whether the timer raised the elapsed event only once. Events. Events property are used to get the list of event handler that is associated with event component. Can raise events. It is used to get a value that represents whether the component can raise an event. Events of timer control. Disposed. When control or component is terminated by calling the dispose method, a dispose event occurs. Elapsed. When the interval elapsed in timer control, the elapsed event has occurred. Tick. A tick event is used to repeat the task according to the time set in the interval property. It is the default event of a timer control that repeats the task between the start and stop method. Methods of timer control. Begin. The begin method is used to start run time initialization of a timer control used one on a form or by another component. Dispose. The dispose method is used to free all resources used by the timer control or component. Dispose boolean. It is used to release all resources used by the current timer control. Close. The close method is used to release the resource used by the timer control. Start. The start method is used to begin the timer control elapsed event by setting the enable property to true. End int. The end int method is used to end the run time initialization of a timer control that is used on a form or by another component. Stop. The stop method is used to stop the timer control elapsed event by setting enable property to false. Thank you.